Episode 46 of the podcast. Do we need more restraint or is it time to sedate? These are two extremes that I keep seeing in the grooming industry, and they're part of what drive this podcast. Neither of those extremes actually addresses the behavior issue, so find out more today.
You're listening to the Creating Great Grooming Dogs podcast. I'm Chrissy Newmeyer-Smith. I'm a certified professional groomer, certified behavior consultant for canines, certified professional dog trainer, and the owner of Happy Critters in Nashua, New Hampshire. And this, my friends and colleagues, is where grooming and training meet.
I saw a grooming discussion on Facebook this week. I saw a groomer was looking for information about how to work with a dog whose behavior is becoming worse. And what I saw in this discussion were a bunch of really common suggestions. But the problem I see is that all of those suggestions were really, really extreme. And from my point of view, they're extreme. And it's the problem that has really driven me to do this podcast. Most of the suggestions were the first extreme of, have you tried to restrain this way or with this tool? Pretty common question, pretty common approach in the grooming world. The other extreme is, it sounds like this dog needs to go to a vet groomer to be sedated for grooming. And that one's the opposite extreme, because there are so many things in between these two extremes. There's an entire field in between these two extremes, and we call it dog training. So neither of those addresses the behavior problem. So I'm going to split this up into two parts. The first part, we're going to talk about adding more restraint or equipment to get the job done. So it doesn't address the behavior problem. You may be wondering, well, what's wrong with that? Adding more restraint or equipment? Have you tried holding them this way? Have you tried this device? Have you tried this way of restraining? It's what we've always done. What's wrong with that? But I want to talk about the behavior problems and where they come from and what makes them worse. So the behavior problem that we are often responding to or reacting to or needing to find a solution for are often based around fear, anxiety, and stress. Fear, anxiety, and stress drive behavior problems in the grooming setting. Not being comfortable being touched, being around strangers, being around other dogs, things like that can be stressful. Even if the dog thinks it's exciting, it's still a stressor. It's still something that's getting that dog really wound up. Being around exciting but being restrained is also a stressor, because we're not letting them play with every dog that's in there or play with us. We're trying to hold everyone sort of in a calm state, calm, comfortable, and cooperative. So even playful can be stress because they are not allowed to act on it. When we look at the behavior of the individual in front of us, the dog on our grooming table at that moment, we can assess what is happening. If the dog is nervous or stressed out, adding more restraint or more equipment to push out a beautiful trim will create more stress. And I'm going to say there are very few guarantees in life, but further stressing an already stressed out dog will make behavior worse. Take that in for a minute, because no good can come of it. There are very few guarantees, but if a dog is stressed and we create more stress, it's not going to cancel out. You might end up with a dog who is shut down, but that's not calm, comfortable, and cooperative. That's a dog who has kind of started to be so afraid that they will not fight back until something new comes up, because later in life, those are the dogs who are like, forget this. I don't care. I'm 14 years old now and I've got nothing to be worried about. Like they're the ones who become worse later in life. What we want is we want the individual dog in front of us to learn to be calm, comfortable, and cooperative. And I know I say that a lot, but it's an easy way for us to remember exactly what we're looking for. But the key word here is to learn. To learn about being calm, comfortable, and cooperative. When we start learning that grooming is safe, we want, even if we need to use more restraint and more equipment, right? Those things can be useful while they are learning to be safe, learning that grooming is safe. And that has to be a priority. Learning has to be a priority. I'm not saying that the groomer has to do the teaching. It could be a trainer, it could be the owner, it could be a combination of groomer, trainer, owner, vet, all of us working together to help this dog be comfortable with the process. Perhaps there is a physical problem going on. Perhaps it's just learned, but we need to work on it. So, more restraint is not necessarily helpful. I see that as an extreme. I see that as, who cares about the behavior? I'm not a trainer. Let's just get it done. I have this piece of equipment or this piece of equipment. Now, I'm a equipment junkie. I really like equipment. So for me to say it's not just about the equipment, I'm really saying it has to be about the behavior and the stress involved for that individual dog and for that individual groomer. Don't forget how much it stresses us to work on dogs who are going to give us a hard time or who are going to freak out or who are unpredictable or who are loud or who are pulling against us. There are lots of ways for us to get hurt. And sometimes it's just trying to keep a dog on a table that ends up pushing your shoulder out. And I think a lot of owners only see danger as their own dog's mouth. They're all convinced their dog would never bite. Or, of course our dog bites. Just put a muzzle on him. Everything's going to be fine now. But there are lots of ways to get hurt. When we talk about adding more restraint or equipment, or have you tried holding him this way? Have you tried using this product? Have you tried using this thing? Have you tried using, it has to be in relation to the behavior we want them to have, the behavior we want to teach, not the hair that we want to trim. Because a dog who learns to be calm, comfortable, and cooperative is easy to trim. A dog that can be touched all over with a variety of tools, objects, things, right? That's a dog that we can trim easily, or groom easily, or dry, or wash. So that is one extreme. More restraint is an extreme. And then the next part, we're going to talk about the time to sedate, because I see that as an extreme also. If you're enjoying my podcast, please remember to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. The other part of the discussion that I saw was the other suggestion, the one on the opposite extreme of have you tried to hold him this way or use this tool, is it time to sedate? So bringing the dog to the vet to be sedated for a groomer to get the job done doesn't address the behavior problem. That's another guarantee. That does not address the behavior problem. There are very few guarantees in life, but this is one, right? And actually, being sedated is being sedated as if for surgery, like totally knocked out for a groomer to get the job done. The dog is still uncomfortable with grooming, and a dog that isn't comfortable with grooming is likely to be stressed out at the vet's office too. So if they're going to the vets to be knocked out for grooming, they are probably still having a stressful experience when they go to the vet's office to be sedated and wake up with a fresh haircut. Most of us wouldn't think that would be stressful because as groomers, we start thinking, well, the vet's office is prepared for that and they're okay for that. But as a former vet tech, no, a lot of dogs are really stressed out for going to the vet's office and being sedated. So really, in this setup, in the time to send them to a vet groomer and have them sedated, knock them out and get them done, is really just sending the same problem to someone else. But sedation isn't a safe answer for many, many dogs. Sedation always has risks. And I want you to think about the dog that needs to be groomed once a month isn't going to get sedated and groomed every month. That's not something that most vets are going to approve of or going to do. It would have to be a really extreme case for a vet to want to do that. Sedation always has some risks. In fact, sometimes our older dogs end up putting off things for a long time until something else happens. And they're like, okay, well, since he has to be sedated for this, let's go ahead and do his teeth too and biopsy that thing. And, like, if you think about how often our pets are not being sedated for things at the vet's office because they are worried about the ramifications of being sedated because this animal is not a good candidate. So if you think about the kind of health problems, so you may be looking at a young dog right now, a dog that's young and healthy, and you're thinking, boy, he is just a pill for grooming, right? It's fine for him to be sedated at the vet's office. He's a perfectly healthy, happy dog. He just is, not good for this. But right now, he's a young and healthy dog. And this is when we should be teaching him about being good for grooming. Because later in life, when that dog is having problems, that dog's behavior hasn't changed, but now they aren't able to sedate them. What kind of problems might that be? That could be heart problems, trachea problems, liver problems. That could be an injury that they're recovering from. There are lots of reasons why a vet may say, I am not comfortable sedating this animal at this time. Certainly, there's an age where they start worrying about sedating an animal at that particular age because there are so many body systems that are not functioning like a young dog. So this dog now has not learned about being groomed properly and learning that it's safe and learning how to be calm, comfortable, and cooperative. So when we say that this dog now can't be sedated, now we have a dog with whatever those problems are or those age-related dementia problems that we sometimes see that still needs to be groomed. Now what do? Well, now you have to do the same work you would have done if he was a puppy. The same work you would have had to do back when you said, I think it's time to send this dog to the vet for sedation, right? I end up with a lot of those dogs. I end up with a lot of them because this is kind of my thing, I mean, I'm a groomer who trains and a trainer who grooms, and I have trouble separating the two anyway. But what happens is that we have to do some behavior modification, some training, some work, and it has to be done. It just, even at that late age, it has to be done. And I know that can be tough for groomers to sell to customers like you've always been able to do it before. But now, not only is your dog hard to handle, your dog is fragile, right? We know that stress is bad for dogs. All right, that might sound like an assumption, but when dogs are stressed out, they are far more likely to have problems with overheating in a grooming setting, of panicking in a grooming setting, and causing overheating or causing a seizure or causing all sorts of problems. So stress-free grooming isn't just a buzzword, and it's not just for puppies, it's something that we can teach dogs later in life too. There may be times when a dog has behavior problems and is so in need of grooming that we say, let's go ahead and get this dog's hair done, sedated at the vet's office, and then work on behavior. You will need to bring this dog in next week, even though he has no hair. Right? We can't just work on it when he needs a trim. There might be times where that is the kind thing to do in the dog's best interest in that moment to get it done, right? But the behavior still has to be worked on. And that's really important. That's really why I started doing this podcast. For so many groomers and for many in our industry, the old standby, the common go-to has been those two solutions. Those two extremes, is, well, we need to restrain him harder or find a way to get it done or have the vet sedate him. And I got to tell you, in between those two extremes, there exists the entire field of dog training. There are hundreds of things to try. There are plenty of ways to work on the behavior, also known as the behavior problem. Right? If we're talking about a behavior problem, we have a behavior that needs to be worked on. And there are a variety of professionals out there who can work on those problems. So building a dog who is calm, comfortable, and cooperative can happen in many, many ways. I know sometimes I hear people saying, we tried this and it didn't work. Okay, then let's find out why it didn't work. Let's dig deeper. Let's take a look, because something else is likely to work, right? I'll tell you right now, I started working with dogs in 86. I started working with animals in 85, and I have not tried everything. Not by a long shot. So anybody who tells me, we tried everything with this dog, I'm telling you right now, You haven't. You haven't tried everything. It can feel like that, and it can feel like you've tried everything. But it's really important to really look at the problem of the individual dog, not just generic. So, what I mean by generic is when somebody says, oh, he's not good for his nails. And the answer is, then let's do this, right? Without asking any more questions, right? Let's do this. It's almost like saying, oh, not good for nails. All right, let's look that up in the dog training manual, page 86, and there's a paragraph here of what to do, right? We know that behaviors are more complex than that. A basic answer might be the right answer for your dog, but ask all the questions. Think about it. So we'll talk more about thinking like a trainer throughout this podcast, because while you are groomers, or vet techs or veterinarians, it's important for us all to kind of be thinking, wait, there are multiple ways to work on a behavior. There are hundreds of things to try, probably thousands, just that off the top of my head, I can easily, if I were to sit down all day, I could come up with hundreds of things to try. So I want you to think about those two extremes don't address our problem, right? If a dog is having a hard time with something, pushing them through it is just going to make them more stressed. Sedating them for it can make them more stressed about going to the vet's office, but doesn't address the grooming issue, the behavior issue, their view on grooming. And we can change those because you know what? Trainers, you might not know this, but I think many groomers know this. The average dog can handle it. The average dog can handle being groomed. It doesn't necessarily mean that we need to do counter conditioning and desensitization protocols for a dog who's a little bit worried, because many, many, many dogs start off a little bit worried and just need a little bit of gentle handling. Just back off a little bit. Don't worry about the trim. Just do a little bit of gentle touching all over or touching that foot and get away from the need to get the trim done or the nail trimming done or the ear clean. Just work on the behavior for a day or two. Even sometimes a day or two is enough. And I know that trainers kind of see it as, oh, well, this is a big behavior problem. But not all of them are big behavior problems until we get to those two extremes where we say, try holding them down this way to get that ear done. Now we're creating a bigger problem. Bigger problem. Because once you start forcing it even more, it becomes a larger problem. It becomes more stressful. So I want you to think about this week for your action step is I want you to think about those two solutions are extremes, right? You have a behavior problem and you're either trying to push through it or mask it, and we need to address it. So think about the fact that all right, those two extremes aren't necessary for most dogs. What most dogs need is something in the middle, and that's to address the problem. Look at the behavior that you are seeing. Strip it of its labels. That dog's not stubborn. That dog's not angry. That dog is stressed. That dog is overly silly. That dog is having something happening that we can work on. If there's a behavior problem, we can create a new behavior. If you'd like to talk to me, you can find me through my grooming and training business, happycrittersdogtraining.com, my email, chrissy@happycritters.net, and through the Creating Great Grooming Dogs Facebook page. And we have these awesome devices in our pockets that allow us to do live video with each other. I can help you with the dog on your table. We can set up live lessons, and you may be surprised at how much we can get accomplished together via video.